Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, this is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is the Question Guy podcast in season two. And I'm here with Shekita Jackson, and she is here for a very particular, very specific purpose that I'm not going to tell you just yet what that is. What we want to do is find out more about her. Now, we are both here in the Hampton Roads, Virginia area. I'm here in Suffolk, and Shakita, just remind me, you are in where in Hampton Roads?
Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach, which is an awesome place to be because it's just so beautiful. If you could be anywhere, that's where you need to be. And I'm over here in Suffolk. So, with that as it is, you are a community leader, and that's very vital to the empowerment that goes on in our area because I don't get an opportunity, even though I live here and, I do my commerce here, I do all that good stuff here. I'm not as connected as I need to be. So it's a blessing, one, to have you on my show. Two, it's going to be a blessing as we can grow as partners and collaborators going forward. But three, you've got the power. And that's what we want to talk about today. So,
Mhm.
what's been going on with you and Hampton Roads since the pandemic? So, we've kind of crossed over the pandemic, thank goodness. And it's been
Right.
2022, and I think we've either survived or we've thrived, but you are empowering people. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So 2022 has been very enriching for me and beyond what I can even imagine. So coming out of, I believe we're coming out of the pandemic, the COVID pandemic.
Uh-huh.
I'll say when we were in the middle section of the COVID pandemic, if that's the thing. I'll say when we were right in the middle of COVID, I started, as everyone else did, we were mostly home and confined, and a lot of places or places we would go would close earlier, stores or so forth. So we had a lot of time in the house and we
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of time to watch the news, a lot of time to look at social media
Too
because we
much
were in
time.
the
Yeah.
house. Yes. So what happened in that period of time with social media and the news and so forth? We all started seeing things that needed to be addressed, right? And one of the things for me started paying attention to because I'm a mom of four daughters, but only one of them is still in school, which she's in high school, where the kids transition to virtual learning
Yeah.
and having knowing other people who have younger children, it was such uh, a a breach in their learning. I would actually say, a breach in learning
Mm-hmm.
because the transition from in class to out of class to now you have to have good internet in your home. You have to have a spare computer if your child does not have, their own computer. You have to be able to get on Zoom and
Yeah.
everything else. Zoom blew up, and everything during the pandemic. But what that has shown me, Keith, is that it needed to be more educational resources because what I found is that I live in Virginia Beach, right? And Virginia Beach, wonderful school system. I grew up in a school system outside of Virginia Beach. I went to school in Portsmouth, which is near here. Probably may take me 15, 20 minutes to get there from my home. But in Portsmouth and other cities as well, they didn't have the computers, they didn't have the system in place to easily transition to virtual learning. So a
Right.
lot of the children were behind. And just to give you an example of what I mean is that my daughter, they already had computers issued from school. So they were able to connect with their teacher, hop on Zoom, have their class. They already was emailing back and forth before the pandemic with their teacher. So emailing the teacher was not new. Communicating virtually on their computer was not new. But my nieces, who are in another city here locally, they didn't have that. The schools didn't have um, they didn't have computers. The teacher
Right.
wasn't prepared. And I remember my sister Keith calling me frustrated because she could not get assignments for her kids
Yeah.
because the teachers were not in the schools anymore and
Yeah.
there was no communication. So I remember my um, sister going up to the school 3 days to try to get an assignment. And then I remember them being told that the parents can sit in the school parking lot for those that needed like Wi-Fi services within the city.
Mhm.
So, and then another thing, Keith, is that my sister went to school because they couldn't get school books. So they
Hmm.
went a whole semester with no access to school books, no access to any learning material. And then some teachers started creating packets out their own pocket,
Yeah.
creating packets to try to get to the kids. So it was a lot of educational disparities that were happening during COVID. So with me having a nonprofit in the area already, I sought to fulfill that need and to build a bridge and to fill the gap with what they're not receiving in school. So the idea came to do literacy programs, do literacy camps for reading, writing, and math for children ages 6 and above. Now that idea didn't have any resources at that particular time. Just
Well,
the
before you
idea.
continue, what's the name of your nonprofit?
Yeah, so my nonprofit is Care for Me Youth Initiatives.
Okay.
Right. So we were already doing different things for children and things for the parents and parent education or so forth, but we pushed more into the enrichment process. So this year in 2022, we were able to offer a free summer camp for children they were 7 to 12 years old, but we did allow some 6 year olds to come in. But it was free to them, free to the families,
Good.
and they came in from 9 to 2. They ate breakfast there, they ate lunch there, and we worked on reading, writing, and math. And that was in Portsmouth, and we did that. And this fall, we're doing lunch and literacy one Saturday a month. So we've
What
been
do you call
able
that? You
to
you called it what?
lunch and literacy,
Cool.
lunch and literacy.
That's a great
And we're
title.
doing that every single month. We have one this Saturday, but we're doing one every single month for the fall and also for the spring. And we're revamping our summer program next summer to include 2 cities. So that came out
Well, Portsmouth
of
and what?
the need in COVID. It's either going to be Portsmouth in Norfolk or Portsmouth in Chesapeake.
Okay.
And we're looking at Portsmouth, Norfolk, what's the other one? Newport News, because the average statewide is probably about in the 60s
Yeah.
for children and reading, writing, math proficiency in the state of Virginia. But when you look at those certain cities, you can get all the way down to 26%
Yeah. Yeah.
to in the 50s. So that's why we're focusing on those areas. So a lot of literacy enrichment programs came out of COVID, and we're making sure that the families don't have to pay for any of these services. And we've even had them on Saturdays for the families that have to work, that now they're able to bring their child out on a Saturday to have these programs. And then another thing that came out of COVID is that we the mental health issues really took a hike, because people are in the house
Yeah.
for the most
Yeah. I
part
mean, that
with
was
their family members. So, or they're not able to do what they were doing prior to. So, with depression and anxiety rising so much, I wrote a book that I released this February, and it is Do You See Me Trying to Breathe? Because we're going out and we're functioning during our day, but we're still battling with our own eternal issues. So, Do You See Me Trying to Breathe is a book that was released this February. And so, again, that came out of COVID also.
well, where is it? Where
This
can we
was,
get it?
you can get that book from Amazon. You can go on my website at sjglobal.me and get that book. But yes, so that was birthed also out of the pandemic. And it's a real life story that was just hid up for so long, but it had to come out with everything we were seeing with mental health and depression and suicide
Yeah.
with in COVID. People dealing with the loss of all their family members. So yes, that was another COVID born item here. So, in reference to community work, we're doing a lot of emphasis on children literacy, reading, writing, and math, and also a lot of focus on emotional wellness for the adult, the parent, as well as the child. I'll be doing a emotional wellness lunch with children age 6 and up in Franklin. in about 2 weeks.
Really? Wow,
um,
cool.
so yep, that's on a Sunday. We try to make it fun, add games, add food. Food always makes everything better. So that's what we're going to be doing with the family, so they don't have to cook on that Sunday. They can just come on out and have fun with us
So
and
that's an
talk about emotional
afternoon?
wellness.
That's an afternoon thing?
It's going to be at 2 p.m.
2
Yep,
p.m.? Okay.
2 p.m. Yeah, on
Well, I mean,
at
I
the
need to get
Franklin Workforce Development Center.
then I need to get this podcast up before the other ones so that people can know. Because that's 2 weeks from today.
Yes. Yeah, December the 4th. That's when
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
I
So
don't know
I'm
how
gonna
many weeks that is, but it's soon.
so
December the
and I
4th.
say that literally. So I want all the all your links, your LinkedIn, your book on
Yes.
Amazon, this date, all that's
Yes.
gonna go in the description because this is gonna go on YouTube and then of course on LinkedIn. So I need to get this out quick.
Yes. And also
Yes.
the nonprofit for their families is careformeyouth.org.
Okay.
Careformeyouth.org. And you can find all our activities there. If you want to partner with us, if you want to support financially, you can find all the information there on careformeyouth.org.
So just to kind of go back a little bit and just kind of support what you're saying, I have a 12-year-old daughter. And so, 2 years ago when we were in, critical mass and COVID was all a thing, and we live here in Suffolk, and there's never I never take an opportunity to talk down or bad about anything, but it was a real pivot. All of us took a hit. So I don't care where you are, where you live, or what age your child is in school, even college students took a hit. I mean,
Yeah.
it just blew up and it blew everybody out of the water. Now over here in Suffolk, the school systems, at least the one that she was going to, did offer, Chromebooks. And so we did get Chromebooks, but she did not adjust well to virtual learning. You know, it was just didn't. I mean, and it was a friend. Everybody's home. It was very
Hmm.
frustrating. It was frustrating for her. It was frustrating for me. It was frustrating to kind of keep her on target. Now that we're back in the classroom, everything's better. It's just the experience she needs to be in the classroom. She needs to be
Hmm.
with her friends. She needs to see, hear, and smell the teacher. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, it has to be
Hmm.
real. And so, you talk about the academics, but then you also talk about the mental health, you know, lots of frustration and frustration to the point of, being angry and just kind of, throwing your hands up in the air and just, it was just a very difficult, very challenging time. So, and that was just in my
Hmm.
household, and I'm going to admit.
Right.
And so I can, I appreciate the fact that your daughter was in high school, which
Hmm.
probably made it a little bit better because she's a bit more mature and can kind of handle pivots a bit better, but still, not being able to see friends, not being able to see, people that
Yeah.
you've been seeing on a daily basis, regular basis. It was just really
Yeah.
frustrating.
You're
But
right. And I have,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, go.
No, I was going to share during that time. So, COVID, I believe we all shut down primarily around March 2020. So, I
Not
had one daughter. I
19.
have
I
four
mean,
daughters now. Was it
yeah, it was
19 or
2019
20?
because I say that because I was teaching college and college went virtual. Yeah, college went
Okay.
virtual in
Okay.
March.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we went on here lockdown though, physical lockdown, maybe around March 2020 here, physically locked down.
Yeah.
And I had one daughter that was graduating from Georgia Southern.
Okay.
So her graduation was in May. So when we went on lockdown, they immediately closed the school. So
Mhm.
now all these college students had to figure out, and this is within the span of 2 days. I remember 2 days. They had to figure out how to get home if they did not live there or where they was going to go because they were immediately closing the campus. So we were able to get it here, which my best friend lived in Georgia, so she was able to go there, and then she came home. But there were no her graduation that she had worked up to for 4 years
Yeah.
was now a something they had to create virtually.
Yeah.
And I remember some campuses couldn't even create that in that time span. So some did not have a graduation at all, or some had a virtual graduation. And then I had during that time, my other daughter was expecting to go to prom her senior year, and there was no prom. So
Right.
it took a lot of toll on children. So addressing not only the aspects that they needed to build their academic components, but you had to address
Mhm.
um, the mental capacities of these kids because they're having to immediately adjust, just as we're having to immediately adjust. So the whole family, the whole household,
Mhm.
have to learn coping mechanisms again
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
learn
Very much.
new ways to live. So that's why we dug into emotional wellness, and you have to break it down on basic levels for children, but it's asking them how they feel and allowing them to express how they feel in their words, as well as we do it for adults and address the academic component. So that's what 2022 has been doing for us in reference to community, building the village. The village is one of my two favorite words is village and impact. Right? So village is what we have to be forever and always. And in that village, it creates the impact in people' individual life, as well as our life as a community. So that's what we're doing in our strongest community work this year for 2022.
So, as a community leader here locally, you didn't just appear one day and say, "Hey, I'm a leader. Let me take care of stuff." I don't, what's the backstory? I mean, real briefly, because I
Uh-huh.
want to get into 2023, but how
Uh-huh.
did you really grow? And I asked this very, very specifically because I just wrote a book. It's going to publish before the end of the month about becoming a leader, becoming a
Mhm.
person who's developing into a role of a leader. So how did you become the community leader that you are? I mean,
I love that question.
what got you started and what keeps you going?
I love that question. And I love that question in reference to, like I mentioned, I'm in school also. I'm still on my leadership learning. And part of being in an academic setting for leadership and, doing all these leadership courses
Hmm.
is becomes a question of our leaders created in a formal educational setting, or what is it about them way before they get there?
Wow, I asked the
So
same
that's what
question
I
in my book.
love learning. That is what I love learning. And when I now I'm working with a lot of nonprofit leaders in the leadership and building them up in their leadership roles and how they structure their organization. But everyone has a story. So every time I come across someone, especially in the nonprofit world, when nonprofits are hard, they can be difficult tasks, but very rewarding um, things. So I always ask them, what is it that made you want to do this? Right? What's the passion? We all do stuff because we have a passion, and that's the zeal of that passion keeps us going. So I always want to know when I meet a nonprofit leader, what is the story? Why you do it? So my story and how Care for Me Youth was birthed is because it's my real life. So I took my real life and I say, well, you know what? I believe in living this life. We are here to teach someone something, to give to someone else. That's our purpose is to give of ourselves. So what happened with me and Care for Me Youth reaches parents 13 and up because I became a mom at 13. I had sex at 13. Keith, I know. I had sex at 13 and I was pregnant my first time having sex at 13, and I did not have family structure. So I said that my one of my favorite words was village. So I didn't have the village in my family. So what happened was as I grew up, and I always um, tell my daughter that she grew up with me. We grew up together because I was 13, and we grew up. grew up together.
Right,
So
right.
with that, I didn't have family support. And I had times where I was homeless, as a teenager. And I don't can't fully figure it out, but I took it one day at a time. I graduated on time, and I was only able to do that by people that were not in my family,
Okay.
because other people came to me and say, "Hey, I'll watch your daughter this week." It may have been like my parents, friends, or so forth. I'll watch your daughter this week while you go to school, or I'll give you a ride to school this day. It was other people that created a village in my life, and they kept telling me, "Hey, you need to go to school. You need to go to school." And that was not something I heard in my household, nor did once I became a parent, no one in my high school told me about going to school. No
Right.
one did any college prep or anything. I guess at that time they didn't even expect you to graduate high school.
Mm.
So no one did any going to military or go to college. There was nothing post high school. It was just graduate.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
with that and being homeless, and I had a parent who was on drugs and having no family support, I took a nursing program, and I've been educating myself ever since then. And there was people that came along in the years where me and my daughter were growing up, and in that time, they did something for me that created an impact. My other favorite word, they created an impact. And whether that was giving me a ride to school or to the grocery store, or giving me $20 so we can get something to eat, it allowed me to keep pursuing education. That's why I'm big on education. Education was the thing that set me apart from every single person I knew growing up. I grew up in a project, so education kept me out of there. And I always knew that if I keep educating myself, that my children would never have to live in a low income neighborhood. They would never cry out for something that they don't have. They would never go without a meal if I can keep educating myself. So that is what I did. So with now, many years later, my kids are, again, I have four girls now, and one of them is just graduated with her degree in biophysics.
Wow.
Another graduates May from Regent with her master's degree in mental health counseling. And I have another one who's in veterinary school. And my youngest one is here in high school in her 10th grade and hope to pursue pharmaceuticals. So they know the drill of education, right?
Okay.
I've instilled that, and not only verbally, they watched it. They watched me go to school, work full time, work two jobs, and still go to school. And this is what now is just embedded in them. They have to pursue education. But in all of those years, I would have people that may have just been in my life for a season, or they told me something I needed to know. They showed me a different way, and that created an impact for me. And that's what Care for Me Youth was born out of. People that were not my blood relatives cared for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to create that village for other young families, for other young parents, so that they know that their children don't have to be raised or don't have to live in the same circumstances that they lived in. My children they've never been hungry. They've never lived in the same projects, the low income housing they've never lived in any. So, and they work and they have their own money. They're doing good.
Well, good.
Um,
That's a
and
good thing.
none of them had a child. No child of mine have had a child. Well, I have no grandkids. So I was about to say that they did not have a child when I had a child, but they broke the cycle because my mom had me when she was 13.
Wow.
I had my first daughter
And you were
when
13.
I was 13. My children have broken the cycle,
Good.
right? And it's something because we was on a cruise earlier this year, and one of my daughters said, "See, mommy, we broke the cycle."
That's good. I like that.
But they broke the cycle. So now I want to empower young parents when they don't feel they have support, that they can, bootstrap themselves up from where they are, regardless of how old they are, whether that's by entrepreneurship, because I teach that also,
Mhm.
or whether that's by career means. So whether they're going to work for themselves or they're going to work for somebody else, we can figure it out together. And it's all based on education. You have to know more to gain more. You know, the more you know, the better you'll be doing. So that's what the story is. That's where Care for Me Youth was born out of. And we want to be in the community, grassroots, hands on, in the neighborhoods, finding these parents, because as a young parent, you feel shame, you know, and a lot of disgrace and a lot of hopelessness. So you're not oftentimes are going to seek out for different resources. You'll just deal with the life that you have. So we
Mhm.
have to go to, whether it's go to their homes, go to their churches, go to their community centers, go to their neighborhoods and connect with these young families to pull them out of where they are. So that's the story, Keith.
Well, I appreciate you telling me it took a lot of guts to do that, but you lived it
Yes.
and you've come out of it
Yes.
and you've taught your daughters to not let circumstances rule them so they could rule over their
Yes.
circumstances, and that's really good.
So I
So,
think that's where the leadership component is, because I've always had to strive to be set apart and strive to just not only lead myself, but lead my children away from my own background, from my own environment that I was raised in. So all that's why all the leadership skills started with me. And then of course through entrepreneurship, they grew owning businesses. It grew doing more in the community and in church. All of that fostered my leadership skills.
well, let's continue the conversation because you're going to join me and two of my colleagues this coming January. So, January 2023, January 21st, 2023, we're going to be I'm hosting an emerging leader conference. And both you and I are going to speak at this conference. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and you're going to talk. What are you going to talk about?
I
Give
am
us
going
some
to
hint.
dig into one of the things that I love to talk about lately,
What's that?
which is collaborative leadership. How do leaders collaborate? How do they partner to fulfill the mission? So I can't wait to talk about that.
So that sounds more like a statement. Let me ask the question.
Hmm.
How do leaders collaborate?
I
What's the
love
secret
it.
sauce?
This, I would say, one of the tools you have to have is the ability to manage relationships and communicate, right? And there's a level of vulnerability that you have to have as a leader in order to collaborate and partner with other leaders, right? Because you got to break down walls of insecurity, you got to break down doubt, you have to break down just knowledge barriers. But a lot of those things are broken down when leaders are transparent one to another with where they are, where they're going, their current state, and the needs they have within their personal life and the needs they have within their organization. So it's a lot of transparency, vulnerability, communication, and understanding that relationships have to be nurtured, just like any other relationship. The business relationship has to be nurtured, just like I will say a marriage relationship. Key.
And that's perfectly fine. But what the words that you're using tell me that you don't see that a lot. Or am I wrong?
No, you are absolutely correct. So
Okay.
I recently spoke with 30, a little over 30. These were nonprofit. They were the owner, the founder, the current director, the current administrator of their nonprofits. They're doing awesome things in the community. They have proof in what they're doing and the successes that their programs are having, but they are on the island to themselves,
Oh,
right? So no one knows the how strong their programs are other than the recipient, because they're hidden away, they're to themselves. And for the purposes of what they were sharing, is that the reason why they feel so on an island to themselves is one, the lack of knowledge and the lack of wanting to be vulnerable with someone else in their position,
which
right?
is
Leader
difficult.
to
It's
leader,
challenging.
CEO to CEO.
Yeah.
director to director, wanting to be vulnerable with someone else because you feel as though you are subpar and where you need to be in your leadership, or you don't have the processes, the SOPs, and everything that need to be in place in your organization, and you don't want to disclose that with anyone. And you believe that the mission that you have for your organization is just your mission alone. A lot of leaders believe that this is my business, my organization, and it's my, but it needs to be a resource for the community or a resource for your neighborhood, the environment, of so forth. So we have to get out of the it's my mindset, and how can we build this to create better environments within our community.
That those are the words. Those are exactly the words that are in my book. And we didn't even
And
and
I
we didn't
haven't
even
read your
talk
book.
before this. That's
Nope, and I
perfect.
haven't read your
And
book.
so that's what we're bringing. So that's what we're going to bring to the conference. That's what we're going to bring to the table. We're going to bring the pillar of collaboration along with values alignment, sustainability. These are the things that are going to sustain and really promote the leaders here locally and hopefully nationwide. And then hopefully,
Yes,
because I've got connections globally
yes,
who want to support what I'm doing. And now that they
yes,
know me, they're going to know you. And so
yes,
I know some people who probably will jump on the fact that you're doing some great things.
yes.
So we're going to give the Hampton Roads community something awesome in
We are.
January.
We are. I do believe that, Keith. And another area that I have found, and I'm working with quite a few people on, and the fact we're talking about now, I'm talking about for profit entities. A lot of for profit entities are people that are owners and they have, or they just have ideas. They don't know how to form effective partnerships. And I mean legal partnerships. The partnership agreement seems so far fetched to a
Mm.
lot of organizations, or a MOU, a memorandum of understanding.
Standing,
It
right?
seems so far fetched to a lot of people, and it keeps us from collaborating legally, right? Everything needs
Understood.
to be written down. And a lot of times we lack that aspect of documentation in our organizations to make sure that the two that are coming together, or the three that are coming together, they're on the same page and that everyone knows their responsibility, right? You can't have good collaborations when people are unclear about their responsibilities and their roles. So I love to share how to form effective legal partnerships.
Well, good. Then that's what you're going to do. And that's what you're going to do at my conference. Now, under the disclaimer that you are not a lawyer. So
I
that's
am not a
all right.
lawyer. Disclaimer. Great disclaimer.
But we are going to talk about collaboration. We are going to talk about values, sustainability, alignment, and accomplishments because you've accomplished a lot and you've a lot more to accomplish here locally.
Yes.
And hopefully, as we push through 2023 and beyond, I could be supportive of all of your efforts. And
Yes.
hopefully, some exchange would be great as well. And so,
Absolutely.
with that, I do want to close out our conversation, but without, I can't stop the conversation until you give me a word of hope for 2023.
Oh my goodness. So 2023, I tell you, it's more, I believe that it is more than hope. I believe there has to be a level of expectation for 2023,
Ooh,
right? Because, and I believe that wholeheartedly because we've come out of the pandemic. We're almost back to some form of normalcy of whatever that was in our individual lives. But 2023 has to be the year of expecting to a reward on all that you have put in place in 2022. You know, all of the things, like I say, the initiatives, the thoughts, the things we implemented since the pandemic. 2023 has to be the harvesting of that for us. So, and I am expecting that. I'm expecting that in the lives of the children that we touch. I'm expecting that in the lives of the parents that we touch. I'm expecting that in the life of everyone who attend the conference in January. You have to expect to be better. In our recent conference, we had t-shirts made that state, I'm building me better. Like it has to be a commitment that we have to ourselves that we're building ourselves better. And once we do that, everything around us becomes better. So we're building me. I'm building me better, Keith. I'm building me better, and I expect a harvest from it in 2023. And that's where we all should be.
Now, I usually end my conversations with, the word from my guest, but I just had a conversation with a gentleman. His name is Coach Jim Johnson. And he literally, and this was about a week ago, and he literally said very much the same thing. And I wrote about it in my latest LinkedIn article this week, that everybody becomes better when the leader becomes better.
Yes.
And so that was perfect. And so with that, I will close out our conversation. Shekita Jackson, thank you so much for
Thank you
joining me
so much.
on the Question Guy podcast. And for all those who are watching and listening, we'll see you next time. Take care.